air traffic controllers in Southeast Asia have lost contact with a jumbo jet carrying 239 people.
Their fates still unknown. For their families, every day emotional highs and extreme lows.
The Malaysia Maritime Enforcement Agency also spotted oil slicks in the South China Sea.
Malaysian authorities, meanwhile, have identified 2 passengers traveling on stolen passports. Police say there's no evidence the 2 young men were part of any terrorist group.
We have now learned that the plane was way off course when it disappeared, that the plane had almost done a complete U-turn. The question now is why, and another big question, of course, is where.
All right, good night. Those are the last words heard from the cockpit of Flight 370. One of the first questions for investigators, who were the 2 men at the controls of Flight 370?
Sir, can you tell us what you were doing inside the house? Were you investigating?
There are a lot of theories out there about what happened to Flight 370.
2 communication systems stopped working within minutes of each other. Was someone trying to hide the plane?
What we don't know and what we do know are sort of starting to come together.
Its last contact, 8:11 a.m., somewhere along this arc that stretches as far north as Kazakhstan and as far south as the Indian Ocean west of Australia.
The focus of Australia's search efforts now are trying to locate 2 pieces of debris spotted in satellite information.
It is probably the best lead we have right now, but we need to get there, find them, see them, assess them, to know whether it's really meaningful or not.
9,000 miles searched, but nothing to show for it, for 5 planes scouring the vast waters of the Indian Ocean.
It's about the most inaccessible spot that you could imagine on the face of the Earth. But if there is anything down there, we will find it.
Based on their new analysis, Inmarsat and the AAIB have concluded that MH370 flew along the southern corridor and that its last position was in the middle of the Indian Ocean, west of Perth. This is a remote location, far from any possible landing sites. It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
Paul Weeks is a husband and father of 2. He was on his way to start a new job in Mongolia, his dream job. Before he left his home in Australia, he gave his wedding ring and his watch to his wife, Danica.
Just as he was leaving, he said, I'm going to leave my wedding ring here. Should anything happen to me, I want the ring to go to the first son that's married and the watch to the second. And I said something to him like, don't be stupid, just come back and I'll give it back to you and you can give it to them.
Muktesh Mukherjee and Xiaomo Bai had been on vacation and were on their way home to their 2 young sons in Beijing.
As parents, nothing was more important to them than those kids. Everything they did was surrounded those kids. You go to their house and it was covered with pictures of their boys.
30-year-old Huang Yi was also on her way home to her 5-year-old daughter. She works for a semiconductor company based in Austin, Texas, and was on board with 19 of her colleagues. Rodney and Mary Burrows from Australia are looking forward to becoming first-time grandparents after they returned home. They were beginning a long-planned trip with their good friends Catherine and Robert Lawton. The Lawtons were known as doting grandparents. A friend described them as passionate travelers. This group of artists from China were in Malaysia to display their work. Most of them were on the flight back to Beijing. Among them, the oldest passenger on board, 76-year-old Liu Rusheng, a renowned calligrapher who was traveling with his wife. The loved ones of these passengers have waited with prayers and with hope. Strangers, mostly children, have left pictures at the airport in Malaysia. This one reads, "We miss you, we love you." This one simply says, "Please come back."
that aircraft stopped
Can
flying.
they be certain, David? This is the problem, isn't it? If you're, as I spoke to a friend earlier of one of the people on board, of the family on board, until there is 100% certainty, until there's wreckage found of any description that can be verified as being this plane, people are going to think, well, how do we know for sure?
Well, first of all, the pinging that they talk about, this communication that goes on, there's a 30-bit signal that goes along with that, and with that 30-bit signal, it says exactly what aircraft that is by serial number. So you
do they have that, do you think?
I believe they do, yes. After
Why are
talking
they
with them
not telling us if they've got that?
Because I don't think they're obligated or feel that they're obligated to give a technical explanation of what's going on.
But if they have directly got a link to that very plane, that is a crucial piece of information.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. And I can't explain that. Other than the fact that this whole investigation has been run by people who don't have a lot of experience with investigations. All the ones I've run, you start out in control of it, you maintain that control. It's kind of like those days when you wake up and your tire's flat and then your car doesn't start and it just keeps going worse and worse and worse. That's how investigations can get.
Bill Waldock, you've been a crash investigator for 30 years and a Coast Guard. You've been in the thick of this kind of thing many times, maybe not perhaps on this scale, but I can understand these relatives. I can understand these ghastly scenes that we're seeing in Beijing and in Kuala Lumpur of people who just have been told so many different versions of what may have happened, and now they just don't believe anything they're being told.
Well, I think part of the problem here is the fact that they weren't told any technical information from the beginning. And actually, it's a fairly simple explanation, very complex calculations to do it, but it's a fairly simple explanation. It's just a matter of Doppler effect. It's like standing in the train station, watching the train come towards you. You're going to hear a higher pitched sound. As the train bears away from you, you get a lower pitched sound, even though the train itself is the same velocity. That's essentially what the folks that figured this out in Britain used to figure out approximately where the airplane was.
So from what we've heard today, Bill Waldock, would you say, as David said, that it's leaning much more towards some kind of catastrophic failure on board the plane which took it off, rather than a nefarious explanation?
Well, right now I'm kind of mixed myself, but I'll tell you this. In all the years I've been doing this, every single time we've had an in-flight fire, for example, that ends up in the airplane crashing, it happens relatively quickly, within an hour or so, because of the types of things that are involved, the temperatures of the fire, how quickly it spreads. And in every single case, we have had a crew that was able to tell ATC what was going on well before the airplane actually crashed. And that goes back over quite a few of these in-flight fire accidents.